And there's my primary error right there, is turn on the mute button from the microphone. I'm guessing everyone can hear me now. Sorry about that. Thanks for the dry run, the grace there. I'm Matt Yeti. I'm from IVOXY Consulting, obviously. Some of you may know me. I'm joined here also by Ryan Grelck. He's going to jump on here in a minute. We are very excited for this event. I think we've had an awful lot of flux with the Broadcom takeover of VMware, and one of those the one benefit of it is the consolidation of licensing tiers and making things simpler to buy and add on, things of that nature. However, some of the things come to, hey, I need this feature, I might not need this feature, but I have to pay for it anyway with the suitization of things. One of those is Aria. Now, if you are an Enterprise Plus customer in vSphere today, and you want to stick to that level, you will be in the VMware vSphere Foundation tier, which, hey, comes with Aria Operations. So at IVOXY, we said, well, you know, a number of our customers are going to be entitled to Aria going forward with this new subscription model. And it would behoove us to help our customers feel more comfortable with Aria. And hey, if you're paying for it, you might as well take advantage of it and get the value out of it. And that's been our approach. We've helped customers with Aria, formerly known as VROPS, vRealize Operations, for a number of years. But adoption has been hit or miss. And I think going forward, we're going to see an awful lot of uptake in the adoption. And one of our consultants, Ryan Grelck, who's now been here over 6 years, has kind of taken up that mantle, is putting on a class next month about Aria. And we wanted to put together this workshop and kind of just go over some of the finer points of what that class will be covering and what you can do with Aria Operations. So Ryan, take it away.
All right. Can you hear me fine?
Hear you great.
All right, great. Welcome to the workshop. Today I'm going to be talking about Aria Operations and Aria Operations for Logs. These are the products that are going to be included in both the VMware vSphere Foundation and VMware Cloud Foundation SKUs. VMware Cloud Foundation will include a few more products, but right now we're focusing just on these two because they are included in both SKUs. Introduction here. My name is Ryan Grelck. Been with IVOXY, like Matt said, for over 6 years now. Multiple VCP and I'm a VCAP. VCP in vSphere, desktop, cloud automation. My VCAP is also in cloud automation. I've spent 22 years or so working with VMware products. First really got started doing VMware Horizon, then I branched out to the rest of the VMware suite. What do I like about VMware? Well, it's been rock solid, pretty easy to use as far as an end user. You know, I've not always been a consultant. I've been down in the trenches like most everyone here. Daily goal, I always want to learn something new that I didn't learn yesterday, and I want to try and pass on some knowledge that I know to someone else, because I love sharing knowledge, stuff like that. I love teaching. Anytime I'm working with a customer, I'm always teaching them also, you know, to the best of my ability. And outside of technology, or at least IT, I should say, I'm a retro gamer and I'm a record collector. I have 500 or so records, mostly heavy metal. I love them. Gotta love that analog sound. All right. So if you have any questions, please at any time ask us. Raise your hand. Add a question to the Q&A section. Please make it interactive. Both myself and Matt Yeti will work on answering any questions that may pop up. So yeah, help make it interactive. It be a little fun. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about licensing. We'll look at troubleshooting inside the interface. We'll look at some alerts that are available, some dashboards, reports. We'll even take a look at logs and the other integrations that you can add into the Aria Operations suite. And by integrations, I mean additional to not just VMware. You could add potentially PCI auditing. You could add other products such as, maybe you have a pure storage in your environment. You could add that into your operations. So, uh, what kind of questions should you ask for your deployment? So, for this deployment, maybe why do I need VMware Operations Manager in my environment? How could your virtualization approach those problems? And why is my simple question so complicated? So, questions you should ask: why do I need it? Well, do you need to monitor your environment? Is the built-in monitoring that's available with vSphere client, is that sufficient enough for you? When you get an alarm, are you monitored? Are you monitoring those alarms? Are you getting notified? If not, maybe VMware Operations might be a great fit for you. Would a virtualization engineer approach this problem? Well, you would deploy these appliances, and that would allow you to work on getting that information from your environment that actually might have been fairly difficult to get before. Aria Operations is an AI machine learning tool, and it learns your specific environment and will generate alerts based on that environment. So if you need to say, if my capacity is getting a bit low, I can use the tool to, for example, expand out how far in the future I may need to purchase additional compute for my stack, because maybe I'm running out of CPU usage in my cluster, for example. Why is that question so complicated? Well, it all depends, on that specific question. So, a bit of warning, we're going to jump into the deep end a bit. Don't worry, we'll answer your questions here. And I'm not going to have a ton of slides. I'm actually going to go and do some hands-on demonstration of the tool to show you exactly what the tool looks like, how it performs, etc. So, what is VMware Aria Operations? Aria Operations is a tool from VMware that allows you to monitor your own private cloud resources along with resources that are hosted in the public cloud. So you may have your on-prem vSphere, vCenter deployment with additional hosts, maybe an entire VMware infrastructure out in the cloud. Operations allows you to monitor both your on-prem and your cloud environments. So VMware Aria Operations, like Mr. Yeti mentioned earlier, formerly known as vRealize Operations. So you may hear VROPS when you're talking about this tool.
Or VCops, right? Didn't it used to originally
vCenter Operations? Yeah, long time ago. Yep. It's a unified AI-powered IT operations management platform for your private, hybrid, and multi-cloud environments. It uses AI and machine learning to provide continuous performance optimization, capacity and cost management, remediation even. Depending on your licensing, you could also have automation tied to maybe some alerts that you see in your environment. So, for example, if a VM or a host is getting full of capacity and your cluster is not bouncing the load properly, you could even have Aria Automation say, you know what, looking at the historical trends of my cluster, I need to move at least these 10 VMs to another host to balance that load better, and stuff like that. And other things that it can do is it could even check on compliance, like PCI and other compliance regulation needs. So why do you want to do Aria Operations? You have your cost savings, better use of your physical devices, reduced administration because it can help automate a lot of those information. It can help you consolidate your environment. You can help scale your environment to plan for the future. It'll help you with resiliency, and you get great reporting available in the tool. It includes continuous performance optimization. So you have your real-time performance monitoring, predictive analytics to identify and resolve issues before they impact the users. You have efficient capacity and cost management using that machine learning to forecast capacity needs and your resource allocations based on your specific data, not necessarily somebody's back of the napkin math. So it makes it a lot easier to reduce costs and improve efficiency. So we could see here in the lab, when I get to that we could even scope out what is my runway? Am I going to run out of capacity in half a year, or do I have capacity for a whole another year or even longer? The tool can help us find that. Remediation. So it can help automate some of your common issues, freeing up your staff to focus on more of your strategic needs in your environment. It'll help with compliance. So say you need to go with a PCI audit. This has an integrated plugin for VMware specific settings inside your environment that may be related to PCI. It has multi-cloud support. So in addition to on-prem, it supports VMware Cloud on AWS, AWS itself, vSphere, Google Cloud Platform, Azure, and if you're hosting vSphere based on in the cloud, it can do that. And there's a large number of management packs and integrations that are available that you could extend its functionality. Like I mentioned, you could have a plugin pack for your Pure Storage, for your Dell storage, for monitoring your Apache servers, monitoring your IIS servers, application monitoring. It's really a very powerful tool. So what generally does Aria Operations monitor? So you have your compute. So that's your host, your CPU, memory, disk, network utilization of your physical servers, not your virtuals. It will monitor your virtual machines, your containers, and even your Kubernetes clusters. For your storage, it'll monitor your storage capacity, performance, and utilization across all of your various storage types. So if you have a NAS, SAN, vSAN, or even object storage, it can monitor those. And it even has specific plugins for some of those technologies like vSAN. Networking, so it can monitor your network bandwidth, latency, packet loss, and other key performance indicators. So for example, if you're in the cloud and you're having performance issues, maybe you could see, oh, I'm getting really terrible packet loss on my VMs, and that's why it's providing a terrible service for my customers. You can easily monitor that and do that as part of your troubleshooting for your networking issues. It can monitor applications. So it can monitor your application availability, response time, throughput, error rates for both traditional and cloud native applications. It can monitor your operating systems. So it can monitor OS resource usage, processes, services, and even system logs for various OSs like Windows, Linux, and Unix. It's great because you could see, oh, where are all of the Active Directory servers in my environment? We could easily find that using Aria Operations, assuming you have everything set up properly. We can monitor databases. So this includes monitoring database performance metrics, query response times, and resource utilizations for a whole bunch of different database types like Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres, etc. And cloud infrastructure. So you can monitor your cloud infrastructure resources like your compute instances, storage volumes, load balancers, virtual networks in those other cloud providers such as AWS, Azure, and GCP. But wait, there is more. Billy Mays here. Yeah. So Aria can be extended to offer support for other technologies. These include stuff like Apache, Apache Hadoop, Apache Tomcat, Cisco Hyperflex, Cisco UCS, Citrix Virtual Apps, VMware Horizon, IIS Server, SAP. We could even monitor other VMware tools such as VMware Tanzu. All of that can be easily brought into Aria Operations. So next thing. So what is Aria Operations for logs? Aria Operations is a tool from VMware that allows you to monitor all of the logs that are generated inside of your VMware environment. It's essentially a SIM that's available in your license SKU. So it's like a light version of Splunk, for example. But what's great is not only can it monitor your VMware logs, but you could also use it as a syslog server ingester to ingest your syslog logs. It's really great that you're able to do that. And it makes searching your logs quite a bit easier. You could create reports on that, create dashboards, etc. Inside the Aria Operations for logs. And one thing that's really cool is if you have it set up provisioned alongside the Aria Operations tool, you can actually view all of your logs in the Aria Operations tool from Aria Operations for logs. And I'm sorry about the naming scheme. I didn't name them. It's all VMware. All right. So how do you get Aria Operations? There's a couple ways to do that. First way is VMware Cloud Foundation. This includes VMware Cloud Foundation Operations and VMware Cloud Foundation Automation. So with VMware Cloud Foundation, this also includes Workspace ONE Access, which is a tool that allows you to, it's an identity provider. It can connect your on-prem to cloud accounts or your AD and have everything done through the Workspace ONE Access. It allows you to do single sign-on throughout all of your VMware tools. And this is on the VMware Cloud Foundation SKU. It also includes Aria Operations for logs, Aria Automation, and it also includes other monitoring tools, such as those other monitoring packs that I mentioned. And you could even use an open source monitoring agent called Telegraph. And you could use that to get even more granular as far as what you can monitor in your environment. So anonymous attendee asks, does operations monitor the Postgres server inside of the VCSA and similar embedded services inside the appliance? And actually, yes, it does. And I'll show you here in a bit that it's native. I didn't really do any changes. So yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, next way is VMware vSphere Foundation. And this includes VMware Aria VMware Aria Operations, and VMware Aria Operations for logs. And I don't really need to talk about the capabilities because I've already talked about them. All right, so a little bit about Aria Operations terminology before we get into the dashboard. There's going to be a lot of terms here that are fairly unique to what you would see inside of Aria Operations. So I want to go over them a little bit. So first, we have data sources. These are sources of information that Aria Operations can ingest and report on. This often includes stuff like vSphere. It includes stuff like your vSAN, your NSX, maybe even your cloud connections. We have integrations and management packs. So these are a collection of predefined metrics, symptoms, alerts, and dashboards for specific technologies. This can also include integrations for integrations for your PCI compliance, etc. Or even, VMware Horizon integration monitoring would be an additional pack that you would deploy. You have dashboards. Dashboards are graphical representations of your environment. Views are quick views of your infrastructure, and you could really drill down into specific objects inside of your vCenter. Reports are automated reports generated in both PDF and CSV formats, and we'll generate a quick report while we're going through the demo. It's really nice that it generates a really nice looking PDF for you. You can create custom reports, which is really great also. Alerts. So alerts are alerts that are generated in both your vCenter and by your Aria operations. So for example, in my environment, we had a host that kept on crashing. We fixed that crash, but inside Aria operations, it does say that Aria operations got the vSphere notifications, alerts in there. And there was even some different alerts specifically from Aria operations. Capacity. So capacity is an estimation of your current and future state capacity. This can include both your compute, your storage, your networking capacity in your own environments. Reclaim. So this allows us to identify underutilized workloads to reclaim resources across environments. So for example, we have a server that's could be fairly over provisioned. Let's just say that you have a server that has 8 vCPUs and 64 gigs of RAM. Aria Operations has been using its machine learning and AI technology to monitor your environment. It could say, you know what, I've been monitoring the performance of this VM for a while, and I could see that you actually probably need 4 vCPUs and 32 gigs of RAM. So you could easily downgrade that VM and get some capacity back so that you can host more VMs inside your cluster. Right sizing. So this is another way to identify reclaim is for maybe you have orphaned VMs in your environment. So, or maybe VMs have been powered off and they don't need to be powered on. That's what the tool does. Right sizing allows you to modify to increase or decrease those allocated resources like I was just talking about. So that's the CPU, vCPU, the RAM, etc. for your VMs. Syslog. So this is a standard way in which log files are written to and can be distributed to remote collection hosts. In this instance, this would be the Aria Operations for Logs. Collector. This is a syslog server that receives syslog logs. Object. These are the monitored entities within the environment. This can be anything in your environment. So it could be a VM, it could be a service that's running on that VM, for example, IIS. It could be anything in your environment. Aria Operations is very granular in terms of what it's monitoring. Next, we have metric. So these are measurable values that describe performance or health of an object. And we'll be dealing a bit with metrics here during the demo. Symptoms. So this is a condition that indicates potential problems based on that metric. So for example, maybe there's a CPU spike on a server on every Thursday at noon. The symptom would be, oh, maybe there's a problem going on with that server. And it just happens to be that maybe it's ingesting log files from a certain server once a week, and it just happens to be during the day. And that would create an alert for you. Alerts. So these are notification triggered when a symptom occurs. So that symptom could be too much CPU usage, for example, or out of the norm, for example, or recommendations. So recommendations are actions suggested by Aria Operations to address issues that could be raised by your alerts. So it could be, for example, maybe you have a misconfiguration in your environment. It'll say, I recommend you to fix this specific issue. So for example, maybe you have a network DV switch that's misconfigured on a certain host. You can you'll have a recommendation from Aria Operations to go ahead and fix that tool. And then VMware tools. So Aria Operations leverages VMware tools inside the guest machines. And VMware tools is software that's installed that helps optimize the interaction between the guest operating system itself and the ESXi or vSphere hypervisor. Any questions so far? I did see that there was a question that came in saying, Operations for Logs is Log Insight. And yes, I forgot to mention that it's another product that's been renamed several times. So it's Operations for Logs is the previously known as Log Insight. Okay, so a question is asked. Aria was mentioned earlier in January and February 2024 for security advisories. Is Aria a closed system that operates solely on premises without any cloud integration, assuming our deployment is on-prem only? And yes, so if your deployment is on-prem only, there will be no cloud resources available, no cloud resources used. So you don't need to have any connection to the cloud if you don't want. Next question, can Aria integrate with vRealize Network Insight? And yes, it depends on your level. So vCloud Foundation, you can do that, not with VMware vSphere Foundation. And vRealize Network Insight is now Aria Operations for Networks, which is included in that SKU. So it's another name change that you may need to keep at the top of your mind. All right. And now demo time. So let me go ahead and stop my share. Oh, next one. Next question. And if you were lucky like us, we moved all of our Aria products to the VMware SaaS cloud, recently just redeployed it all and moved it all back on-prem. Since it's a SaaS product, it's being end-of-lifed. Yeah, that's just the fun life of software in our current life as an IT administrator. Share my Horizon. All right. Okay, so I should be sharing my Horizon. All right, so let me go ahead and log in. And sorry for not doing dark mode. I think it might be a little bit easier for our attendees to see it in light mode. So wear some sunglasses if this is too bright for you. I apologize. So when you log into Aria Operations, this is the main page that you'll see. And we have the Launchpad and the multi-cloud overview. Currently, I only have one cloud, and it's my on-prem private cloud. If I had other networks here, I'd be able to monitor those specific ones. So if I had Google Cloud on VMware Cloud Engine, I could add my account, connect to my VMware on the cloud. But this will tell us some information about our environment. We could see that I have my data center located here in the Seattle area. We could view some information about our environment. Currently, we only have one location. If we had multiple locations, they would show up here. So for example, if I had one in New York, I'd be able to add that other one and link them up together. We could see what the top objects are in our environment. So in our specific environment, we have 268 virtual machines, 222 distributed port groups that can actually be tied to us hosting our own lab environments for our students. We spin up a ton of backend networking using an NSX automation. Mr. Cozzolino, who is on this call also is an NSX wizard. He configured all that. It's really cool. I love it. We have 21 data stores all deployed throughout our environment for our small 8-host cluster. We have 8 hosts, like I mentioned, 8-host cluster. We have 3 different distributed switches. We have 2 clusters, 1 vSAN data store, and 1 data center. So they're all hosted in the same data center. So if I go into vCenter, we could see I have my 2 clusters, my data center, and the 2 clusters and the 4 hosts per cluster. So an anonymous attendee asks, is Aria Operations going to be able to provide the functionality that we're losing with Skyline end of life? I'm not exactly sure what Skyline may have been providing. I know Skyline is VMware's opt-in solution to do some on-prem monitoring in your environment. It's actually really handy if you have a vSAN. It allows you to do, some of that stuff. I think it all depends on what the functionality that you required that Skyline used that see if maybe Aria Operations can provide it for you. So that could potentially be on a case-by-case basis. Oh, okay. So Ray, thank you. Your VMware TAM or Broadcom TAM told you that newer version of operations 8.18 and on. So this is 8.18.2, I believe. Oh, no, I'm 8.17 still. Or maybe 8.18 is not out, or it's out soon. So it will include findings that were reported on Skyline. So thank you, Ray. And next thing is Skyline will be rolled back into vCenter in the 9.x release. Okay, great. I'm assuming in the 9.x, maybe 2025 is my guess for the timeline. Okay. So a little bit more information. We could see what the total cost of ownership is, and this is some estimation. We could see what our potential savings may be if we do some of those resource deallocations, for example, or any realized savings. We could see what our time remaining is. So, for example, if we were to run out of issues or run out of capacity, maybe my one cluster would show as critical or a warning saying I'm getting close to my cluster capacity. But if I'm looking at my hosts here, my cluster capacity is pretty low. We're very up and down in our lab, our specific lab, because depending on if there's a class going on or not, our lab utilization's pretty wild sometimes. We could look at overall capacity. So this is the combination of the two. We have just a quick glance, CPU, memory, disk space, and we could look at the growth trend. So we could see how many of these specific objects are growing. So maybe I just want to say, I don't want to have my distributed port groups or distributed switches. So I could see I'm getting a certain amount of growth here. And then this is pretty much when we started having our hardware issues recently. So we've had more, looks like, had a large number of warnings, looks like. All right, so anonymous attendee says, if Microsoft oversees the AVS express route, we can't see anything in the VM for AVS troubleshooting. Does this look into the AVS environment? Oh, Mr. Coslino is typing in answer. And let's see what he says. Well, I'll go ahead and talk while he's doing that. Okay, so next thing is, so the main page is actually this launchpad. And anyone who deploys Aria Operations will see this message come up. Aria Operations used to be very chatty as far as the alerts. So a large number of these alerts may have been disabled. So I do recommend once you deploy Aria Operations to view this KB article to see, you know, what some of these alerts may have been deactivated, and you may have to go in and manually reactivate some of these. So like for instance, this one at the very top, virtual machine has disk IO latency problems caused by snapshots. Snapshots, depending on your environment, can absolutely cause issues for IO latency. My longest tenure with VMware technology is VMware Horizon. Part of Horizon is you're going to create a snapshot when you want to deploy that image to a desktop pool, for example. Sometimes if you have many snapshots applied to that VM, it can take a long time to provision that VM. So maybe you would want to re-enable that specific alert so that you could see. And some of these other ones, maybe it's demanding more CPU than the configured limit. That could be another one, depending on the usage inside your environment. So the way that this Aria Operations works is it has these pillars of operations. You have your observability pillar, capacity pillar, cost pillar, compliance pillar, and sustainability pillar. So if I go ahead and click on observability, this gives us just a quick view of all of the different monitoring and troubleshooting tools that are available to us here inside Aria Operations. So this includes alerts, dashboards, reports, Workbench. Workbench is pretty cool, and I have some cool examples in there. Log analysis. So this is the integration with Aria Operations for logs. And we have diagnostics. So it can ingest findings from Skyline and get some resolution. Currently, I don't have that configured in our environment because it does require a management pack for that. And I don't have that management pack installed. We could also do some agentless monitoring on specific services on your specific VMs, or you can monitor using the open source Telegraph agent, which is actually a third-party agent that's available for anybody to use. And that agent can gather a lot of great information. Or you could even do some synthetic monitoring using an API. Maybe you want to do REST calls, for example, to monitor an application. You could do that here inside Aria Operations and even create a dashboard specifically for any of these. And then there's other application performance monitoring tools that would require potentially another license or purchase of this technology. So like Datadog's another log aggregation tool that allows you to get information from pretty much anything. And Aria Operations can ingest and report on that data for you. So let's take a look at the other pillars. So we have capacity. Capacity allows us to check, maybe we want to determine that there's sufficient capacity in our environment. So I could just go ahead and click on view. That takes us to the capacity view. And this is my single data center we're hosted. We could say, hey, maybe there's a $2,000, $666 cost savings per year. So if I go ahead and click on that, I could get some more information that's broken down. And I could see that right now, both of my clusters have sufficient capacity. But maybe there's some optimizations I could do to reclaim some unused resources. So I could view my reclaimable VMs. And then that would give me some information. So I could say, oh, I have all of these powered off VMs. Like, let's expand it and let's take a look at these. So I could take a look at these VMs and say, all right, well, theoretically, this is costing us $57 a month because it's using up 535 gigabytes of space per VM. And these are actually just class VMs, which is why it's pretty high. Our class includes all kinds of stuff. It's a full VMware nested environment, so everybody gets their own environment. So you'll see a lot of these pods in here when we're looking at the rest of the VMs. Some of these are templates. So some of these are VDI templates. I definitely don't want to do that. So I could say, all right, let's go ahead and let's exclude these. and they'll never be reported on again. Or maybe I have idle VMs. Maybe these VMs are just not doing much. So for example, Pure plugin. I probably should have that up and running, or maybe this IPAM VM. And maybe it's running too much memory. We could take a look at that. How about snapshots? So this tool allows us to say, hey, if we delete some of these snapshots, can it do that? Anonymous attendee asks, is this cost savings specific to the type of storage and other hardware, or is it just a generic guess? And it is pretty much just generic guess, because your hardware cost for your organization may be a lot different than hardware cost for another organization. Maybe one organization has a slower NAS, and that's a much lower cost storage platform versus the all NVMe, all flash storage that may cost a lot more. You can kind of give it a little bit more information, but it is mostly a generic type thing. Can you disable cost savings in the software if you don't want to see it? That's a good question. Let's see. So, oh yeah, here's some. So you can tweak some of these settings. Cost driver settings. I'm not too sure about that anonymous attendee. I'd have to dig into it, and I don't want to spend too much time looking into that. But Matt Colzino can probably help you out. All right, so back to capacity. So we could assess our capacity. We could even go directly into the right size tool or the reclaim tool or the workload optimization. So let's go ahead and click on right size. And these are recommendations that Aria Operations has found in our environment to say, oh, these are the oversized VMs in the environment. So we're potentially oversized by 28 vCPUs and 16 gigs of RAM in my management cluster. So if I expand that, I could take a look at my management VMs, and we could see either it will be vCPU reduction or a memory reduction, for example. So for this specific staging VM, it wants us to drop it down to 2 vCPUs and from 8 gigs of RAM to 4 gigs of RAM. I probably don't want to do that because I use GitHub on that box, but for the most part, it sits idle except for when I'm provisioning my student desktops. Another one could be for this domain controller. It sees that the CPU usage is fine, but really it doesn't need that much RAM. And actually, I'm going to leave it at 4 gigs for this specific one, because it's a domain controller running server OS. I don't want to run it with 1 gig of RAM, even though my activity on my Active Directory is really, really low. I'd rather have that peace of mind, for example. So this would be one that I would want to exclude from the right sizing. And then we could also view our undersized. So we could see that, hey, maybe some of these VMs actually need a little bit more RAM. So we have no vCPU recommendations because our vCPUs are actually pretty good. But for example, my domain controller 1 server currently has 4 gigs. It's recommending to upping it to 5 because probably this is my main primary domain controller, which makes sense. This is the one that's always getting hit. This is my Aria Operations Manager VM. So as you can see, it even monitors its own self. So I don't need a CPU increase, but maybe I should bump up the RAM by a little bit because it is monitoring a lot of my environment. And when you deploy this appliance, you choose the size of the appliance, and obviously it could be modified after the fact. Reclaim. So if we go to the reclaim, same thing. So these are resources that we could potentially uh, delete VMs if we wanted to, or move them to cheaper storage. Maybe we want to move them from our flash storage to our spinning disk cluster to save on storage, because maybe we don't need that VM to be on all the time. We could just move that, and then that could potentially save some storage. Idle VMs. So these are VMs that are just sitting there doing nothing, things for the most part. And it's, these are service VMs. So this is our IPAM. This is our IP address management VM. And this one really only gets used when anybody in the lab needs to configure a specific like static IP, for example. How about these snapshots? So like I mentioned, snapshots can cause a lot of headaches. And these VMs have a lot of snapshots. So my vRealize orchestrator, this is my old vRo deployment. It actually has a lot of snapshots because I had a lot of issues with it before I redeployed it as Aria Operations. But it has almost a terabyte of snapshots that are available. So other things that are available here. We have, you want to go over orphan files? Let me go to that real quick. So you have orphan disks. So anonymous attendee asks, what about orphan files? Not specifically orphan files, but it can find orphan disks. So here in our environment, we potentially have some orphan disks. So if I look at our pod vvols, we could see that there are potentially blank VMDKs in our environment here that I may need to clean up. Or maybe my management data cluster. And maybe these are old VMs. Yeah, I have no idea what this one is. I'd have to go and double check it on that actual data store. Workload optimization. So this allows us to look at how our cluster currently exists. So we could see that I don't have workload optimization on my clusters. So potentially some of my workloads are imbalanced on my management cluster. So let's go take a look at that. And look at that. One of my hosts does not have much usage, which is why it's showing that imbalance. Apparently I have an issue. Something about the IO storage. I'll fix that later. We'll see that there's an alert for this also here inside the environment. But what I could do is I could allow this to optimize my environment right now to move the workloads. Maybe that DRS wouldn't catch, which it obviously did not, because I'm pretty sure I have DRS enabled on this cluster. I could even calculate the optimization potential, and this may take a little bit for it to pop up. But it'll calculate all of this information for me to give me a more granular information. And if I had any history for any workload placements, it would show up here. Currently, I've none, and I haven't ran this specific tool in my environment, but I am able to do that. Cost. So cost can be pretty handy, especially when you need to plan for future budgeting purposes. So maybe I want to say that I want to analyze my cost, or for my VMware Cloud bills, for example, or the price of my infrastructure, or the costs of this. So maybe I could do cost. I want to see the total cost. I want to take a look at my vCenter data center, current month, analysis scope, and I'll just do select. And sure, do that. And then this will run a cost analysis saying how much my data center would cost if I would want to run it inside of a different region, for example. And it's probably not a great example, but that's one thing that the tool can allow us to do. You can include chargeback in here also, and migration planning. So if you wanted to plan a migration to VMware Cloud, this tool can do it in a what if scenario. So let's go ahead and cloud plan. And let's go to Azure. And let's select the US West 2, which I believe is the one that's here in the area. Instance AV36. How many capacity? Maybe 15% steady state headroom, 75. And we could add all of these specific workloads. We could even import a VM and see what the specific VM usage may be in your environment. So let me go ahead and let's see, pools, consultants, this one, it's my VM, it's my Windows 11 VM. Let's see what it would cost to run this VM inside if I were to, scale it up, for example. So it could potentially cost me up to $14,438 per month to scale up this VM to fill out 5 hosts, for example. Compliance. So one thing that's really cool is you can install plugins to go against other compliances. So down here, we have the regulatory benchmarks. So we have CIS compliance, PCI compliance, HIPAA compliance, ISO compliance, and these are great. So I could just go ahead and click on the management pack details for PCI compliance. I could enable that, and I can install it into my policy. And I created my own cool policy also, so might as well. I'm the admin. I can name it whatever I want, and I can enable it. And this takes a little bit to enable. It's going to go ahead and download the management pack and install this. And what's great is I could then use this tool to make sure that my hosts are configured against the PCI compliance specs that are generated out in the specific environment. So sustainability. You could also check to see what your green score is. And I don't have this currently configured, but if your organization wants to keep track of how green your environment is, it allows you to do that inside this tool. We could monitor your business applications or packaged applications. So if I go and click on business applications, I could add other applications into here. So let's do internet DC. And let's go ahead and grab my DC1 and drag that over here or not. But it will allow us to create an application monitor. I currently don't have anything configured here. Apologize for that. And packaged applications. So these are other applications that it can be managed to monitor inside your environment. So like I mentioned, Telegraph, I don't currently have any Telegraph agents, but if I did have that installed, they could show up there. And SDMP services, and this is kind of built in, and I could see which kind of services are available in my environment. So if I go down to service discovery here, I could see some of the different services that VROPS has enumerated inside my environment, and I could see, click on Active Directory. Oh, I have way more Active Directory servers than I actually utilize in my environment. And I could see that these are actually VMs from my Intune class that I use that runs an internal to that specific user domain controller. So I could then say, all right, maybe I don't need that. Let me go ahead and spin these down. I could do that immediately because I just noticed that, hey, these VMs are available to be removed because I don't need them in my environment. Another thing is Apache Tomcat. So this is monitoring the Apache Tomcat server on the Aria Operations Manager server. And I believe somebody asked me about that inside the Q&A. And we could get a little bit more information about what these Apache Tomcat servers are and the Apache Tomcats running these multiple servers. Same with HTTP, which is my Aria Operations Manager server. IIS, I'm running IIS on some of my domain controllers also. Probably not the best thing. And here's the VROPS Postgres data. So it does monitor information about your Postgres databases. I could even monitor my vSAN. So I have my vSAN here in my management cluster, and we can see, take a look at the workload. Maybe there's some issues. Authentication statuses failed, for example, on this OpenCVE. Do a option, and hey, I have different options that I do specifically to this server. So maybe I see that this is my OpenCVE server. Maybe I have a script that I want to run that would then run a shell script against this specific VM because it's a Linux VM that could then, maybe turn off a server or restart a service, for example. That's one of the options that you could do with this tool. So maybe you want it to monitor that the Apache Tomcat service is running. If it's down, you can have an automation task if you're using vCloud Foundation, which is, you have to set up the Aria automation tool to be able to do this, but you could have that automatically restart those services, for example. And then other views that you could see in here inside the Launchpad is you could click directly into your vSphere, vSAN, NSX, Horizon, which I don't have configured. I do need to get that running. I don't have a Kubernetes cluster yet in our environment. I do plan on getting one up and running. And if we had vCloud Director, we'd be able to do that. And then same with the cloud. If we had VMware Cloud Foundation, we'd be able to connect that to both our on-prem and into our cloud plane if we're using that cloud plane. And we could even connect into Amazon Web Services, Azure, Google Cloud, for example. There's other stuff like Automation Central. So we could look at automation jobs. We could even create a certain job to maybe we want to right-size machines automatically for us at the end of the month. Or maybe once a week so that your VMs are constantly being managed and not over provisioned. So we have integrations here inside Aria Operations, and these are the integrations that I personally have deployed in our environment. So we have the VMware Infrastructure for Health. This checks health information inside your environment. This is the adapter to connect Aria Operations to Aria Operations for Logs. This is NSX. So this is connecting to my NSXT deployment that I have in my environment so I could get information about that. And with my vCenter, I could get some information, which this includes both the vSAN connection and the service discovery connection. And then here in the repository, these are the integrations that can be deployed in your environment. And these are the installed integrations that I currently have. I have the vCenter. These are native. So if I wanted to connect to the VMware Cloud on AWS, I can. So all I would need to do is just add an account. Aria Operations for Logs, we can see that I have one account and it's using a service account to connect to my Aria Operations instance using delegated rights using a RBAC group, role-based access. Same with my NSX. And there are some other integrations that I could easily download and apply. So if I wanted to do ping is a service that can actually ping stuff on your environment. So if I click on activate, it'll activate this and it's going to download in the background this management pack so that I can do this to maybe I want to ping a device every 30 seconds to verify that it's up, for example. Okay, well, it's installing. I can't click elsewhere, but as you can see, there are other integrations that you can do in your environment. So objects, like I mentioned during the slides, we have the object browser, and this allows us to drill fairly deep into any of our environment. So if I want to take a look at, let's take a look at my Windows 11 VM again, for example. Drilling down, we get way more information than we would ever get inside vCenter. And it's really easy to digest. You have, red, yellow, green lights here. So right now I have 2 warnings that are active specifically on this VM. And I could get some information about this VM. So this is a 2-socket, 2 cores per socket VM. No limits on any of my resources. I could look at the version of my tools, and I could even actually upgrade tools here if I wanted to. I could open it directly into vSphere. So if I go and click that, it'll open it directly into my vSphere client. So I could do other management tasks as needed. Get some information about CPU usage. Click on that. I get a graph. Hey, the CPU usage is obviously very low. And this is just over the last, 4 or 5 hours. I could expand this as needed. So let's do current month, go. We can say, hey, there's been a spike on such and such a day. That's probably when I was doing some work on it a couple days ago, patching it, for example. So that's probably why it's high CPU. And we have a little runway. So this is the capacity view. Right now, I'm saying I have greater than 1 year capacity at my current utilization. Same with my the most constrained on this VM is potentially my RAM usage, and Windows 11 is very RAM heavy. If you didn't know, so it's saying that right now I'm using 53% of RAM. It's mostly idle for this specific VM, but if I do need to do that, that's probably going to be the first thing I need to take a look at. We could also click on alerts. So right now I have the PCI plugin. That's definitely potentially an issue. So right now this one's violating the PCI DSS 3.1. And if I click into that even further, I could get more detailed results. And I could say that this is violating PCI 2.2.4, which is a configuration setting that I need to do on this VM to set it so that it's not potentially violating PCI DSS. And then we could click on potential evidence, and this would give us information potentially about it, this specific alert. We could view metrics on this device. So, for example, maybe I want to see, when this was VM was created, how many virtual disks, what is the resource allocation, what is the tools version, what is the OS, for example, and we get a quick little view dashboard of these specific metrics. Excuse me. I could click in other stuff like badge. All right, what is the risk percent? And this is the PCI risk. So right now, when I enabled that other setting, it says, oh, it went from 0 to 25% risk in this one. So lots of information here, as you can see. What is the read throughput on all disks? So right now, I'm not using it very heavily, but I could also change the date control. So this is the last 24 hours. Maybe we want to go last 30 days. And all of these graphs will update for me for the last 30 days. Pretty handy. Capacity, same thing with that. If this was a server, it'd probably be better instead of a workstation. But we can see CPU, memory, and disk space demands. And we're saying that we have greater than 1 year remaining for CPU utilization. And that's mostly because I'm rarely going over 2000 gigahertz, it looks like. So not using a ton of space. 2000 megahertz, I mean, not gigahertz. That's really fast. Compliance. So these are different security compliances. I could do vSphere security configuration, vSAN security configuration. This is not on the vSAN cluster. And then maybe I want to check my PCI security compliance, and I'm non-compliant with 1 out of 36, which, like I mentioned before, is the PCI 2.4.4, and I need to change that TPS to true, which TPS is enabled. I'm not exactly sure what that one is. And then we could also see what all logs have been generated by the specific device. Let's do current month. Haven't been any logs. I don't think I've actually logged into this VM. Then we could click on more stuff like details. We could click on views. So this is a little bit more information of all of the different views that are available to us. And we have 206 different views that we could add. Right now, there are only 2. And these views are automatically added to this machine because it's in violation of these two, so it automatically added it to it. But I could also add other views to it here if I wanted to. All right, so that's Object Browser. We could also view information about our networking. So we could look at the switch, get some information specific to this distributed switch. That's our 1 gig management link. Let's take a look at our management link. And we could get some more information about this one. Have there been any alerts? No alerts. No alerts is great. We could find metrics on any of these. Same with compliance. Make sure that you're compliant. We're currently 100% compliant there. Great. We have NSX objects. So we could click on the NSXT and we could look at this and hey, some of these are definitely not compliant if we were to try and work towards being PCI compliant. So like this one, TLS 1.1 is enabled somewhere in our environment. We need to double check and make sure that's disabled. Make sure that 1.2 is the current one enabled. We click on logs, objects not currently supported. Okay, that's fine. We could, if we had any applications or groups created, we could create a custom group to monitor our apps, for example, or we could just do all objects, and this is everything that is available to you through through operations. Next view, inventory. So this is an inventory of all of the settings that Aria Operations can do. And can I want to expand all, but for example, right now 260 things are being monitored in the data center inventory view. Business applications, like I mentioned, we can create business application monitoring. So maybe I would want to monitor status of my domain controllers, for example. We could do that here. Same with applications. I kind of went over this earlier, where we can check out the application status on any of these VMs to see which ones. And these are not all of these VMs have information. And one thing that maybe it failed is you do need to have an account that is fairly uniform across your Unix and Windows environments. So it's potentially that the root password for this OpenCVE is not the root password that I have defined for the rest of my Linux VMs, or a service account may actually be preferred also, so that it could get that information. If I had vCloud Foundation operations, I'd be able to link that here also, and this is specifically connecting to your cloud instance. Next thing we could do, dashboards. Dashboards are great. So if I go ahead and click on home, we can see the different kinds of dashboards that are available to us. We have availability dashboard, configuration, inventory, and we're coming up on time. But let me just show you maybe a vSphere inventory summary. And this is a dashboard that you could potentially run on your maybe your desktop or your NOC. Some of these dashboards can be pretty handy, and you could even pop out this dashboard so that it's in its own browser window to make it a little bit easier. We could also create reports. So I have some generated reports that I've created. Generating reports, pretty easy. There's a bunch of templates that have been pre-created, 64 different templates. And I've used some of these to generate reports. So maybe I want to take a look at my configuration reports for my specific VM. I've ran this via this report before, so I'll just go ahead and click on the PDF. It'll pop up this generated report automatically generated report for me that can give me information about this specific VM. And this is just a configuration summary, but I could run this configuration summary against my entire fleet of VMs and get just a list of everything that's in my environment. And one thing that's also great is you could download it as a CSV. You could create pivot tables from that specific list if you wanted to, if your Excel foo is pretty good. Next thing we could do here is troubleshooting. A great tool for troubleshooting. You can see we have a lot of alerts here. So some of these are, I have all 8 of my hosts is violating PCI DSS 3.2.1. So I'll need to remedy that before I can get my PCI compliance. Maybe a static route's not configured on a specific route. I'll have to take a look into that. So I could double click on that, or check out the static routes, the alerts here, get some information more about that. Excuse me. Other great information, this cluster has a high CPU workload in the IVOXY lab, and that makes sense because this cluster's often hammered very hard, and you could see when this was triggered last. So this is probably when my class was being deployed. We deploy a whole bunch of VMs at the same time, for example. Workbench. So Workbench is pretty cool because we could just create a query on the fly. So I want to say a metric, and you could just even go down and click, and you get information about other stuff. So maybe I want to get some information about my Active Directory DNS, for example. And I created some queries yesterday to show you. So these are my VMs with a certain CPU usage. Here is a more complex query. CPU usage % of virtual machine where CPU usage is greater than 15% or memory usage is greater than 15% in my vSphere. So if I click on that, I could get information, and this gives me both the CPU usage and the memory usage of these VMs. And I currently have 110 VMs that are greater than 15% CPU or greater than 15% RAM usage, for example. And I could even filter out even more. So maybe I want to say all of my VMs that are between 32 and 40%, it automatically selects all of those specific VMs. And hey, what about this one VM? What is my trouble VM that's doing that for the memory usage? And it's one of my ESX hosts is using a ton of RAM, which makes sense because we want that nested ESX to have a lot of RAM. Log analysis allows us to connect to our Aria Operations for logs. And if I go ahead and log into that, we could get a little bit more information here. So this is the Aria Operations for log interface. And I'm going to be quick because we're coming up on time. But we do have a lot of events here, that are saying these are the total number of events, and we can see who the main offenders are. So this is my pure appliance that generates a ton of events because we're always doing stuff with data. Next one is my connection server. And this connection server is connected to my UAGs user. So I do have some errors in this environment. As you can see, I am getting 3,744 errors within the last 24 hours. So I know exactly what it is. I have a database issue with my Horizon that I need to resolve. But this, I could just go ahead and click on this, explore logs, and let's log back in. And I could get some more information specifically in the syslog format of why this issue is happening. We already talked about the optimization and planning. So does anybody have any questions on what I've gone over so far? All right.
Ryan, that was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me go ahead and share the rest of my prezo. So, questions? No questions? Yeah, thank you. Really quick. I'm sorry it was fairly quick at the end. You never know how long these things are going to go. So I will be teaching a class on Aria Operations and Aria Operations for logs. Like Matt Yeti mentioned earlier in the presentation. It will be going on next month. And in the class, we're going to be working on deploying Aria Operations and Aria Operations from scratch in your own hosted environment. So you'll have your own vCenter, your own ESX, domain controller, all of that fun stuff. And you get to create VMs and break stuff if you really want to. Work on creating your own custom dashboards, work on creating your own custom reports, and how to use Aria Operations for logs effectively in your environment. All right. And if you'd like to keep in touch, again, my name's Ryan Grelck, senior consultant here at IVOXY, and Matt Yeti is our director of technology. There's his email if you have any questions. And not to mention, we have a really great podcast called Data Center Therapy. And I've been on it 4 or 5 times. Matt Yeti and Matt Coslino are the main hosts, and they just kick ass at it all the time.
Ryan, I appreciate you sharing my email. If you're happy, email me. If you're not, email Ryan. I just want to make that clear.
Cool.
Please. No, this is great, Ryan. I'm. What do you know when the class is? It's the end of next month, right?
Yeah. I think the 22nd. Don't quote me on that. Let me.
About 6 weeks out. Wouldn't be a
6
bad
weeks
idea to start registering for that if you're interested. And again, I think the uptake on Aria is going to be pretty steep in terms of, hey, I'm now entitled to this. It's not optional if I'm into that suite level, and I may as well take advantage of it. And Ryan, appreciate you providing some color and showing us what that entails, because you read about it and you're like, okay, you might imagine one thing. I think monitoring environments is one of those great challenges that I think everybody does to a certain extent, and maybe very few of those people are completely satisfied with that. So it's really good to see what Aria can bring to the table.
Yeah. And also after the webinar, your IVOXY account manager is going to sound out a discount code for the class if you'd like to join for the class. So I just wanted to mention that too.
Good to know. Look at that. Well, Ryan, yeah, if nothing else, and we all appreciate everybody's time. Again, Ryan, thanks for showing us some pretty cool stuff. And
yeah, no problem.
Thanks for I was going to say thanks for listening to another episode of Data Center Therapy, but we're not there. Yeah, no.
Nope.
Have a great Thursday, everybody. Thanks.
Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.